The Dhammapada, Chapter 7, Arahanta Vagga, the Worthy. Verse 90. No suffering for the emancipated. Gatadhino visokassa vippamutassa sabbadhi sabbaganthappahinnassa parilaho navijjati. For him who has completed the journey, for him who is sorrowless, for him who from everything is wholly free, for him who has destroyed all ties, the fever of passion exists not. The Buddha and his physician, Jivaka. On one occasion, Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, tried to kill the Buddha by pushing a big rock on him from the vulture's peak. The rock struck a ledge on the side of the mountain, and a splinter struck the big toe of the Buddha. He was taken to the mango grove monastery of Jivaka. There, Jivaka, the renowned physician, attended to him and applied some medicine on the toe and bandaged it. Jivaka then left to see another patient in town, but promised to return and remove the bandage in the evening. When Jivaka returned that night, the city gates were already closed, and he could not attend to the Buddha. He was very upset because if the bandage was not removed in time, the whole body would be affected and the Buddha would be very ill. The Buddha knew that Jivaka would not be able to attend to him, so he asked Venerable Ananda to remove the bandage and found that the wound was already healed. Jivaka came to the monastery early next morning to inquire whether he had felt great pain and distress the previous night. But the Buddha replied, "Jivaka, ever since I attained enlightenment, I had the ability to stop pain and distress at any time, whenever I needed to do so." Then the Buddha explained the nature of the mind of an enlightened one. A note from the author. After the consecration ceremony of this monastery, Jivaka attained the first stage of sainthood. At his request, the Buddha enjoined his bhikkhus to take up physical exercise like sweeping, walking, etc. The Jivaka Sutta, which deals with the question of eating flesh, was delivered by the Buddha to Jivaka. Verse 91. Arahants are free from attachment. Uyunjanti sati manto nanikete ramantite hamsava pallalangitva okang jahantite. The mindful strive diligently. They take no delight in the home. Like swans that forsake the muddy pool, they abandon all home life. An Arahant has no attachment. Mahakassapa. The Buddha once spent the Vassa, or rainy season, at Rajagaha with a number of bhikkhus. About 2 weeks before the end of the Vassa, the Buddha informed the bhikkhus that they would soon be leaving Rajagaha and told them to prepare for departure. Some bhikkhus stitched and dyed new robes. Some washed the old robes. When some bhikkhus saw Venerable Mahakassapa washing his robes, they speculated, "There are so many people inside and outside Rajagaha who love and respect Venerable Kassapa and are constantly looking to all his needs. Is it right for Kassapa to leave his lay devotees here and follow the Buddha elsewhere?" At the end of 15 days, on the eve of his departure, the Buddha decided that there might be some occasions like alms food offering ceremonies, initiation of novices, funerals, etc., and so it would not be proper for all the bhikkhus to leave. So he decided that some bhikkhus should remain at the Veluvana monastery, and that the most suitable person to lead them would be Kassapa. Consequently, Kassapa remained in Rajagaha with some junior bhikkhus. Then the other bhikkhus remarked, "Kassapa has not accompanied the Buddha, just as we have predicted." The Buddha heard their remark and said to them, "Bhikkhus, do you wish to say that my son Kassapa is attached to his lay disciples of Rajagaha and to the things they offer him? You are very much mistaken. Kassapa remains here under my instruction. He is not attached to anything here." Verse 92. Be not attached to food. Ye sang sannichayo natti, ye parinyata bhojana, sunyato animittocha, vimokho yassa gocharo, akaseva sakuntanang, gatite sang durannaya. Arahants have no accumulation. When taking food, they reflect well over it. They have as their object deliverance, which is void and signless. Their destination, like the course of birds in the air, cannot be traced. The monk who stored rice, Bellatisisa. Venerable Bellatisisa, after going on an alms route in the village, stopped on the way and took his food there. After the meal, he continued his round of alms for more food. When he had collected enough food, he returned to the monastery, dried up the rice and stored it. Thus there was no need for him to go on an alms round every day. Every few days, whenever he arose from jhana concentration, he would eat the dried rice he had stored up, after soaking it in water. Other bhikkhus thought ill of the monk on this account, and reported to the Buddha about his hoarding of rice. The Buddha saw how the bhikkhu's action, if imitated by others, could lead to abuse and discourage bhikkhus from hoarding food since then. He advised them that they should try to maintain the simplicity and purity of a monk's life by not having any kind of possession. As for Bellatisisa, since he stored up rice before the ruling on hoarding was introduced, and because he did it not out of greed for food, but only to save time for meditation practice, the Buddha declared that the monk was quite innocent, and that he was not to be blamed. The Buddha also explained that Arahants do not hoard anything, and when taking food, they reflect well over it. A note from the author. When taking their food, Arahants are mindful of 3 parinyas that include 1. Niyata parinya, knowing the exact nature of food; 2. Tirana parinya, being convinced of the vileness of material food; and 3. Pahana parinya, rejection of all pleasure in eating. Verse 93. Free are the undefiled ones. Yassa sava parikhina, ahare cha anissito, sunyato animitto cha, vimokho yassa gocharo, akaseva sakuntanang, padangtassa durannayang. He whose corruptions are destroyed, he who is not attached to food, he who has deliverance, which is void and signless, as his object, his path, like that of birds in the air, cannot be traced. The monk and the goddess, Anuruddha. One day, Venerable Anuruddha was looking for discarded pieces of cloth to make into a robe as his old robe was getting soiled and torn. Jalini, his wife of a previous existence, who was now in a Deva world, saw him. Knowing that he was looking for some cloth, she took 3 pieces of good material and put them in the rubbish heap, making them barely visible. Anuruddha found the pieces of cloth and took them to the monastery. While he was making the robe, the Buddha arrived with his chief disciples and senior disciples, and they also helped to stitch the robe. Meanwhile, Jalini, assuming the form of a young lady, came to the village and heard about the arrival of the Buddha and his disciples, and also how they were helping Anuruddha. She urged the villagers to send good delicious food to the monastery, and consequently there was more than enough for all. Other bhikkhus, seeing so much surplus, remarked, Venerable Anuruddha should have asked his relatives and lay disciples to send just enough food. Maybe he just wanted to show off that he had so many devotees. To those bhikkhus, the Buddha said, Bhikkhus, don't think my son Anuruddha has asked his relatives and lay disciples to send rice gruel and other food. He did not ask for anything. Arahants do not ask for food and clothing. The excessive amount of food brought to the monastery this morning was due to the promptings of a celestial being. Verse 94. The sense-controlled are dear to all. Yas indriyani samatham gatani assa yatha sarathina sudanta pahina manassa anasavassa devapi tassa pihayanti tadino. He whose senses are subdued, like steeds well trained by a charioteer, he whose pride is destroyed and is free from the corruptions, such a steadfast one even the gods hold dear. Sakka pays respects to Venerable Mahakachayana. On a full moon day, which was also the end of the Vassa, Sakka, with a large company of devas, came to pay homage to the Buddha, who was then in the residence at Pubbarama, the monastery built by Visakha. Venerable Mahakachayana, who had spent Vassa in Avanti, a great distance away, had not yet arrived at Pubbarama, and a seat was kept vacant for him. Sakka paid homage to the Buddha with flowers and incense. On seeing the vacant seat, he declared how he wished Kachayana would come so that he could pay respects to him also. At that instant, Kachayana arrived. Sakka was very pleased and eagerly paid respects to him with flowers. The bhikkhus were awed by Sakka paying respects to Kachayana, but some bhikkhus accused Sakka of favoritism. To them, the Buddha said, One who is restrained in his senses is loved by both men and devas. Verse 95. Like the earth, Arahants resent not. Patavi samo no virujhati, idakhilu pamo tadi subbato, rahadova apeta kaddamo, sansara na bhavanti tadino. Like the earth, the Arahant is patient, and when provoked does not respond in anger. He is comparable to an indakhila. He is serene and pure like a lake, free from mud. For such a balanced one, there will be no more rebirth. The monk who accused Venerable Sariputta. It was the end of the Vassa, rainy season, and Venerable Sariputta was about to set out on a journey with some bhikkhus. A young bhikkhu, who bore some grudge against Sariputta, approached the Buddha and complained that Sariputta had abused him and beaten him. The Buddha therefore sent for Sariputta and gave him the opportunity to explain himself. Without asserting his innocence, he replied as follows: Venerable Sir, how could a bhikkhu who steadfastly keeps his mind on the body set out on a journey without apologizing after doing wrong to a fellow bhikkhu? I am like the earth, which feels no pleasure when flowers are cast on it, nor resentment when rubbish and excreta are piled upon it. I am also like the doormat, the beggar, the bull with broken horns. I also feel abhorrence for the impurity of the body, and am no longer attached to it. When Sariputta spoke in such a humble way, the young erring bhikkhu felt remorse, and admitted that he had wrongfully accused Sariputta. Then the Buddha advised Sariputta to accept the apology of the young bhikkhu, lest a bad effect should fall on the latter. The young bhikkhu then respectfully asked for pardon. Sariputta pardoned the young bhikkhu, and in turn asked to be forgiven if he also had done any wrong. All those present praised Sariputta, and the Buddha said, Bhikkhus, an Arahant like Sariputta has no anger or ill will in him. Like the earth and the doorpost, he is patient, tolerant, and firm. He is serene and pure. A note from the author. Venerables Sariputta and Moggallana were the two chief disciples of the Buddha, and they were appointed as the heads of the Sangha community. The Buddha advised all the other monks to regard both of them as their father and mother. There are many similar incidents where Sariputta shows his extreme compassion towards certain monks in spite of their mistakes and accusations. Verse 96. The calm are the peaceful. Santang tassa manang hoti, santa vacha chakamma cha, samma danya vimuttasya upasantasya tadino. Calm is his mind, calm is his speech, calm is his action, who rightly knowing is wholly freed, perfectly peaceful, and is unshaken by the ups and downs of life. The loss of an eye. Once, a 7-year-old boy became a samanera, a novice monk, at the request of his father. Before his head was shaved, the boy was given a subject of meditation. While he was being shaved, the boy had his mind fixed steadfastly on the object of meditation. As a result of his concentration, and due to the ripening of his past good karma, he attained sainthood as they finished shaving his head. After some time, Venerable Tissa, accompanied by the Samanera, set out for Savatthi to pay homage to the Buddha. On the way, they spent the night in a village monastery. Tissa fell asleep, but the novice monk sat up the whole night beside the bed of the old monk, and only went to sleep towards dawn. Early in the morning, Tissa thought it was time to wake up the young Samanera, so he roused him with a palm leaf fan and accidentally hit his eye with the handle of the fan and damaged his eye. He covered that eye with one hand and went about doing his duties of getting water for Tissa to wash his face, sweeping the floor of the monastery, etc. When the Samanera offered water with one hand, Tissa said that he should offer things with both hands. Only then did Tissa learn that the novice monk had lost an eye. At that instant he realized that the young Samanera was a noble person. Feeling very sorry and humbled, he made an apology, but the novice monk told Tissa that it was not his fault, nor was it his own fault, and that it was only the result of karma. He urged Tissa not to feel sad about it, but the old monk could not get over the unfortunate incident. Then they continued their journey to Savatthi and arrived at the Jetavana monastery, where the Buddha was in residence. When informed of all that had happened on the way, the Buddha said, "My son, an Arahant does not get angry with anyone. He is restrained in his senses and is perfectly calm and serene." Verse 97. Noble is he who is not credulous. Asaddho akatanyu cha sandhichedo cha yo naro hatavakaso vantaso save uttama poriso. The man who is not credulous, who understands the uncreated, Nibbana, who has cut off the links, who has put an end to occasion of good and evil, who has eschewed all desires, he indeed is a supreme man. Faith alone cannot make one realize Nibbana. 30 bhikkhus from a village had arrived at the Jetavana monastery to pay homage to the Buddha. He knew that the time was ripe for those bhikkhus to attain arahanthood. So he sent for Sariputta, and in the presence of those bhikkhus he asked, "My son, do you accept the fact that by meditating on the senses one could realize Nibbana?" Sariputta answered, "Venerable Sir, in the matter of realization of Nibbana by meditating on the senses, I do not accept it simply because I have faith in you. It is only those who have not personally realized it who accept the fact from others." Sariputta's answer was not properly understood by the bhikkhus, who thought, "Sariputta has not given up wrong views yet. Even now he has no faith in the Buddha." Then the Buddha explained, "Bhikkhus, the meaning of Sariputta's answer is simply this. He accepts the fact that Nibbana is realized by means of meditation on the senses, but his acceptance is due to his own personal realization and not merely because I have said it or somebody else has said it. Sariputta has faith in me. He also has faith in the consequences of good and bad deeds." A note from the author. Faith, in the Buddhist perspective, derives through proper understanding and realization of truth, and not through fear of the divine or a need to satisfy the emotions. True faith appears in the mind when it reaches the unshakable state. Blind faith or fanatical religious beliefs have no place in the Buddha's teaching. Verse 98. Delightful is the spot where Arahants dwell. Game va yadi va ranye, ninne va yadi va thale, yatha arahanta viharanti, tang bhumim ramaneyakang. Whether in village or in forest, in valley or on hill, Wherever Arahants dwell, delightful indeed is that spot. The youngest brother of Sariputta, Revata. Revata was the youngest brother of the chief disciple, Venerable Sariputta. He was the only one who had not left home for the homeless life. His parents were very anxious to get him married according to the custom prevailing in India at that time. Revata was very young when his parents arranged a marriage for him to a young girl. At the wedding reception, he met an old lady who was 120 years old, and he realized that all beings are subject to aging and decay. With this realization, he decided to join the order of bhikkhus like his eldest brother, Sariputta. So, he left the house and went straight to a monastery where there were 30 bhikkhus. Venerable Sariputta had earlier requested those bhikkhus to admit his brother as a samanera should he come to them. Accordingly, they admitted him as a novice monk. Revata took a subject of meditation from those bhikkhus and left for the forest, far away from the monastery. At the end of the Vassa, Revata attained arahanthood. Sariputta requested permission to visit his brother, but the Buddha replied that he himself would go there. So the Buddha, accompanied by Sariputta and Sivali and many other bhikkhus, set out to visit Revata. The journey was long, the road was rough, and the area was uninhabited by people. But the devas looked to all the needs of the Buddha and the bhikkhus on the way. Revata, learning about the visit of the Buddha, also made arrangements to welcome him. Using his supernormal power, he created a special monastery for the Buddha and also suitable dwellings for the other bhikkhus, and made them comfortable throughout their stay there. Verse 99. Delightful are the forests to the passionless. Ramaniyani aranyani yatha na ramati jano vitaragaramissante nate kama gavesino. Delightful are the forests where worldlings delight not. The passionless will rejoice therein, for they seek no sensual pleasures. A courtesan tempts a monk. A bhikkhu, after taking a subject of meditation from the Buddha, was practicing meditation in an old garden. A woman of doubtful character came into the garden, and there she saw the monk sitting cross-legged. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one else about, she said to herself, "Here is a man, I will throw his thoughts into confusion." So, standing in front of the monk, she took down her undergarment several times and put it on again, unloosened her hair and bound it up again, and clapped her hands and laughed. The monk became excited. His whole body, in fact, was suffused with excitement. "What does this mean?" thought he. The Buddha considered within himself, "A monk obtained a subject of meditation from me and went forth to perform his meditations. How is he getting on?" Seeing that woman and observing her evil conduct, and perceiving that her evil conduct was upsetting the monk, still remaining seated in his monastery, he spoke as follows: "Monk, there is no delight where those abide who seek after their lusts. But where those abide who are free from passion, that place is full of delight." So saying, he sent forth a radiant image of himself and instructed the monk in the Dhamma. The monk attained sainthood.